and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
I'm Andy Humm.
And I'm Chris Cooper in the role of Ann Northrup.
Who will be back next week. You keep asking out there, and Ann will be back next week. In the news?
In the news,
the Gallup poll has shown a downtick in support for LGBTQ rights, driven by Republicans.
Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth continues his Christian supremacist crusade, this time ending recognition for 180 other faiths in the armed forces.
Yeah, they're down to 31, I think. The killer of gay dancer O'Shea Sibley in Brooklyn was convicted, but of manslaughter, not murder, but as a hate crime.
An extremely delicate Christian wants his employer to protect him from seeing a rainbow flag at his workplace.
What a story. A judge has allowed a suit from 15 states to stop Trump from shutting down gender-affirming care for minors, so the suit can go forward.
All right, so last week, Andy and I tussled over Mayor Mamdani in New York. Well, he has reneged on a pledge to protect transgender youth in the city, so we'll talk about that.
It's outrageous. 10 years after the Pulse Massacre, construction of a memorial is just about to get underway.
2 human rights pioneers have passed on.
Yes. We're going to show you Pride in Bangkok, a big one, and a little one in Durham, England, with a nice story behind it.
Corporate sponsorship of Pride events continues to slide, but Pride events continue nonetheless.
Yes, the corporations are letting us down. AIDS activists zapped Marco Rubio in D.C., and rally around the country on the 45th anniversary of the first U.S. report of what became AIDS. You may remember that. We read about it in the New York Times on the 4th of July weekend.
And Qween Jean is the first out trans winner of a Tony Award, as is a classmate of mine.
Oh,
so very excited.
That's big news. All right. Bad news first, sort of, this Gallup poll stuff. It shows that support for legal same-sex marriage is down 6 points from 2023. 62% now view gay relationships as moral, but that's the lowest it's been since 2016. And the perceived morality of changing, doing gender confirmation is down 8 points since 2021. So what's going on?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. The slide has been almost entirely amongst Republicans surveyed, and with the lurch to the right of the Republican Party, you're seeing in their membership, in their roles, they're being dragged to the right along with their shift in their administration.
But we still have come a long way.
Yeah.
Gallup first asked about the morality of same-sex relationships in 2001, when 40% said they were morally acceptable. That went up to 71% in 2022, but we're back down to 64%.
But you know what the most important thing, I think, is that the young people accept themselves. They are never going back to the place that you and I started in, where we're like, oh, gosh, this is awful. This is terrible. We're terrible people.
I didn't feel that way once I started having sex.
Well, one would hope not. But, the young people today, they have come up with a very firmly entrenched, I think, most of them, depending on what part of the country they're in. But they've come up with a firmly entrenched sense of who they are. And that's not going away.
And we're going to talk about that. But I also want to point out that the view of the acceptability of legalizing same-sex marriage, from 1996 to 2022, it went from 27% thought it was acceptable. In 1996, when they passed the Defense of Marriage Act by a 5-1 margin in the Congress, by 2022, 71% felt it should be legalized. Now it's had a sharp drop to 64% in 2023.
Hat tip to the many, many, many activists who worked to make that happen, but especially I will name names, Evan Wolfson of Freedom to Marry, who many consider the architect of same-sex marriage.
And the Marriage Equality New York, Marriage Equality USA, all those grassroots groups. And I give credit to the people who stepped forward and said, we want to get married.
Sure.
They are the ones who drove this. Edie Windsor.
And the people who said, we want to get married, despite the fact that many of the organizations weren't there. They didn't think this was something we should fight for. And I think many activists thought, very left-wing activists thought, marriage, we don't want to ape heterosexual institutions. I think the point ultimately that a lot of us reached was it's not a matter of aping heterosexual institutions. It's a matter of having options, the same options as anybody else has. And through marriage, we were able to secure so many other rights or make them inevitable.
One of the top leaders of the movement, and I'm not going to say his name because I like him, but he sat down with Evan Wolfson. He said, Evan, people do not accept this, and they are never going to accept this. This is back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And so don't make this the front of the movement. We don't want to do it. I mean, even the Human Rights Campaign, when people voted for the Defense of Marriage Act, they didn't even mark them down for it. Right. Because,
they didn't want to mess up their ratings.
So anyway, you mentioned that it's the young people. Now, 9%, this is again, we're still with the Gallup poll, 9% of U.S. adults identify as LGBTQ, more than double recorded when they started this in 2012, and it's being driven by younger people. 1 in 4 adults under 30 identify as LGBTQ, 25%.
So, Andy, are you saying that our recruitment techniques have been successful?
Yes. That's what the lesbian Avengers used to say. 10% is not enough. But here's the thing. Because people then say things like, I met a guy from Nigeria once, he said, and we were talking about gay stuff. He said, it's very interesting to me. We don't have that in Nigeria, meaning that they're just not aware of who's gay. And so now, when people can come out, by the way, bisexual people make up the largest segment of our community, while women are nearly twice as likely as men to identify as LGBTQ.
Interesting.
That is interesting, according to the Gallup poll. All right, let's move on. Pete Hegseth.
Oh, well, Pete has decided that you and I, if we were to join the military, our religions would not rate being rated. What I mean by that is you're an atheist, I'm a pagan, and Pete Hegseth has decided, well, we're going to reduce the number of religions that we acknowledge, that we recognize. Now,
reduce it from 211 to accommodate people in the military to 31.
Now, what they are claiming, and this is merely for categorization purposes, that we are not saying we're not recognizing things. We're just saying too many categories. We're going to narrow down the categories and lump people in various places. Now, some of the unintended consequences, or perhaps intended consequences of this, were, for example, Mormons were not categorized as Christians.
They were still in it, but they were not listed as Christians.
Oh,
so
and
Mike Lee and the other senator from Utah went nuts.
Gaskets were blown. And so what they ended up doing to solve that issue was they just removed the Christian label from everybody.
Because Pete Hegseth does not want to, as an extremist, does not want to acknowledge that Mormons are Christian.
It also led to other absurdities, like the fact that Unitarian Universalists, who are signers of the Declaration of Independence,
and deists,
are no longer acknowledged.
Right.
So it's kind of crazy.
And they dumped humanists and New Age churches and various Wiccans.
So yeah, they are claiming it's simply for category. Yeah, why can't I say that word? Categorization, but really it's the leading edge of just sort of marginalizing anybody who isn't conventional Christian.
It is. Well, they've marginalized a lot of lawyers in the Trump administration. They have shed more than 10,000 lawyers since they took back power. Now, I'm sure they're sitting there saying, we're glad you're all gone. You're not on board with our program. But they're losing in court all the time as a result of this.
Look, we can turn this to our advantage, not only because they're losing in court, but because our organizations can scoop up these disgruntled guys who want to see this administration gone.
And state attorneys general offices can scoop them up as well, and they are.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about, we've told you that James Tallarico won the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate, and he's now
in Texas.
He's now facing Ken Paxton, the vicious anti-LGBTQ Attorney General of Texas.
And scandal-plagued. In fact, he's such a damaged candidate that, as we mentioned last week, there has been a tremendous amount of right-wing pushback trying to paint Tallarico as somehow other or feminize him.
Trans.
And trans. Well, now they've taken the big leap on that, and they a right-wing group has actually created an AI ad.
Should we show it to them?
Let's.
We cannot show it to them. We don't have the video. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, they sort of show him as Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music singing
In
my
a
favorite
dress.
things.
In a
and
dress.
his favorite things are trans stuff and all this kind of stuff. It's
despicable.
It's gay baiting. You know, they just want to put this on him. Of course, Paxton is a monster, but of course, we have a monstrous president. You said scandal plague, Ken Paxton. You know, they keep referring to Graham Plattner, who won the U.S. Senate nomination for Democratic in Maine. Every time they mention his name in CNN, it's like scandal plague Graham Plattner. Why don't you put that in front of Donald Trump every time you mention his name? Who could be more scandal-plagued than Donald Trump?
Is Barry Weiss in charge of CNN already?
She will. All right. California election results, the votes are, in addition to Robert Garcia and Mark Takano winning their primaries, not winning, they go into the November election. Non-incumbent Steve Weiner led in San Francisco and will face another Democrat to replace Nancy Pelosi. And in San Diego, Marnie von Wilpert led all Democrats, and she now has to run off with she'll be in the November election with a Republican. That race is a bit closer, but
well, I think the hope with Marnie von Wilpert is that the Democratic vote was so divided and that now it'll come together, hopefully behind her.
It is time for us all to unite. All right.
Meanwhile, while we're in California, in Los Angeles County, there is an employee of the Los Angeles Department of Public Works who's very, very distressed that he has to go to work and see the pride flag for the month of June as he does so.
Yeah, they have a county rule or something that they're going to fly pride flags during June.
So Eric Batman, I'm sure it's probably Eric Batman, but that's okay. We're going to say Eric Batman has a senior civil engineer has requested permission to work from home for the entire month of June, and when that was denied, he's suing, saying that it is against his religious beliefs.
He said the flag has, I don't know where he got this, 6 colored stripes which stand for various expressions of sexuality that are sinful according to my religion. Now, I don't know what I'm going to say. The symbol of your religion is a man being executed, tortured to death. I mean, that's not so nice. But whatever. This whole thing is, and also the colors of the flag are not all about sex.
Do you think it will make a difference to him if we pointed out that Gilbert Baker actually had values like hope and love as the values for the stripes of the flag?
They say he's under tremendous stress. They offered him a chance to go in the back door. Oh no, that would be separate but equal. I'm not doing that.
Well, and the other thing is they accommodated him, I think, in 2023 because of COVID, was it? But they accommodated him Oh no, it was because the building was being renovated, so it was closed anyway. So they accommodated him his desire to work from home. But now they're saying, nope, you gotta conform.
He's being represented by the same law firm that represented Kim Davis. So enough said. All right. A federal court has blocked the Federal Bureau of Prisons from transferring 14 transgender women from women's prisons to men's prisons, saying it puts them in danger.
And the court in California has also stopped the Trump administration's grand jury subpoena for California families' private medical records in their fishing expedition for finding trans kids.
This is a big deal, but Mount Sinai here in New York is turning over the records to the federal government. Now, again, they say it's going to be anonymous, I don't know if there's a word like that, but people are obviously very concerned about this, and we're trying to stop it.
And it's not just Mount Sinai. Apparently, we don't know what NYU Langone, another medical provider in the city, is going to do about that, but they are facing the same issue.
Well, there's a lot of crap in New York, and some of it is coming from the mayor, who campaigned at trans rallies, for trans youth, and said, when I come in, there's no way we're going to stop providing these services to these young people, and they're not providing the services to
Well, no, it's more pointed than that, because, and this is where you're damned either way, they announced that they're starting a clinic to provide services for trans New Yorkers.
Yes.
And then it was revealed that this clinic would not be providing those services to those 19 years old or under.
It's an outrage.
That specific age limit is exactly the limit that Trump has specified in his executive orders, which carry no force of law, but all these hospitals have been falling in line for fear of the loss of federal funding. So now we've got a mayor who said he's going to fight back against that deprivation of services to trans youth, and yet when we set up a clinic to serve trans people, it won't serve trans youth.
And and Tish James, our Attorney General, should be all over this too. I haven't heard from her lately on this, but there was a case this week where in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus Trump, but the U.S. District Judge ruled that these 15 states can seek relief against the Trump administration's attempt to shut down all provision of health care, gender-affirming care for minors. So, the judge is letting the case go forward. The Department of Justice wanted it dismissed.
Meanwhile, in Ohio, the Cleveland Clinic, which is a renowned medical provider, especially for cancer care, but the Cleveland Clinic has established a second detransition center.
Oh, this is disgusting.
And this is a capitulation to the Trump regime's politicized attacks, part of a settlement agreement that the Cleveland Clinic has made under pressure. But it's an abandonment, really, of trans people. And it's very difficult to watch this happen because they're really taking the brunt of everything
It's terrible.
That's going on.
I mean, and again, I don't want to exaggerate, and it's hard to make comparisons, but even our friend Larry Mass, who the guy who wrote the first story about AIDS in the world in the press, I was talking to him. He keeps posting the way they are treating trans people and trans youth especially is like the way, Jews were treated in the beginning of the Third Reich, when you just stigmatize a group. You run for political power by just making them the boogie people. And then what does it turn into? Well, it turns into violence. It turns into people taking violent acts against people who they have been taught are bad, who they've been taught are disturbing society. So it's got to be stopped. And of course, Democrats, for the most part, are standing up for them. I mean, I can always remember Graham Plattner, who's running in Maine. They confront him about trans issues, and he goes, trans girls in sports, and he goes, there are 2 of them in Maine. He said, there are 40,000 people being thrown off health care. Now, what would you like to talk about?
Yeah.
I'll stand up for these kids, but are you going to stand up for the 40,000 who are being thrown off their health care?
Well, and speaking of Democrats standing up and Democrats who didn't, in Boston, at their Pride Parade, a Democrat named Seth Moulton, he's a representative out there in the U.S. Congress,
yes,
and he got booed as he marched in the Pride Parade because he takes the position that the 2024 presidential election was lost because Democrats wouldn't say bad things about trans kids in sports, as if that's really what cost the election.
Right. We should say that, going back to New York, that there are families here suing the Trump administration for suing the Attorney General and the Department of Justice over their efforts to seize these private health care records. They're suing. So all of our legal groups are in court over this. But we need the public officials like Mamdani, like Tish James, like all the others, get on board with this and help.
Well, we have really buried, as far as I'm concerned, the lead on this issue and trans issues in general, because there's a new federal rule that would require funding recipients of any federal money, whether it's a university or a hospital, to deny that trans people even exist. It is a sweeping rule that takes the anti-trans executive orders that Trump has been promoting that don't have the force of law, but by codifying them into the grant-making process, give them the force of law, and would be very hard to undo by the next administration. And it is scary how total it is. The prohibition is vast. The rule bars federal awards from being used to fund, promote, encourage, subsidize, or facilitate gender ideology. There is no prohibition to age limit on it. And it covers universities, organizations, anybody that gets federal funds.
Right. The big thing and we got wind of this, or the Times got wind of it, and we did talk about an early draft of this. Now they're putting it out as a rule, right? And there's a public comment period. But the big thing that they're doing is they're taking the jurisdiction over how the federal grants are made and turning it over to the political people. Because the main thing is, do the grants align with the Trump administration's values and agenda, which means no LGBT group will be funded.
But there's another aspect to this, which is that review that these political appointees will be doing is of the organization, not just of how the grant money will be spent. So if the organization even does so much as have, gender neutral bathrooms, that organization could lose funding for everything else it does.
It sounds like fascism, and I use the term advisedly.
Doesn't it, though?
I use the term advisedly, and we all ought to be more up in arms.
Yeah, this is not final yet, but it's hard to see what we can do to stop it.
The other thing, of course, in the march to fascism, the Congress can do something.
Well, and court challenges might slow it down long enough, hopefully, to flip things in 2026, and we have to flip things in 2026.
But the other thing in the whole authoritarian rule thing that Trump is pushing is, of course, murdering legacy media. You saw that interview with Kristen Walker, Kristen Welker on Meet the Press, where he exploded, but he went after every legacy media. ABC, you're crap, and CBS, even CBS, which he now owns. So we heard a lot about the murder of CBS News this week, Scott Pelley getting fired, standing up to them. And one of the things he revealed in terms of interference from Barry Weiss was, you see her there, that's Barry on the left and Scott Pelley on the right. But she said, in your story about the murder of Renee Good, we want to show the car driving toward the officer. We want at the time of the shooting. And we want to show more violence from the demonstrators that triggered this. She wanted to, and he didn't do that. And he's been fired.
That was Renee Good in the middle of that photo. And do we need to mention that Barry Weiss is a lesbian? And are we ashamed of that?
Yes. And we're going to take your card back if you keep this up.
Yeah, it's kind of appalling. And the other ridiculous...
Because, yes, of course there are right-wing lesbians, LGBTQ people.
Oh, but she's not right-wing, according to her.
Please.
The other scary thing is that with the mergers going on, there is a very real potential that Barry Weiss will soon, not only after destroying CBS News and 60 Minutes, will be in charge going forward of CNN.
Yes, and that is the whole point. I mean, this is what Orban did in Hungary. He took over the media. They wouldn't even cover the opposition. They couldn't even get on TV. It's amazing that it shows you it doesn't work, because Magyar got elected prime minister and he got a 2/3 majority in the parliament by campaigning against this kind of repression. All right. Now, Governor Polis of Colorado.
In good news.
First he took a hit for letting that election denier out of.
I still haven't forgiven him for that.
Okay, and nor has the Democratic Party in Colorado. But he did sign a bill that you can bring a civil action if conversion therapy is practiced on you and it harms you. And this is the way they're getting around this stuff with the Supreme Court saying, well, the therapist has a right to say things and da-da-da-da-da. But if it harms you, you can still sue.
And it's actually borrowing a technique from the right wing that they used against abortion providers, where they would make it possible to sue abortion providers, and it basically shut down abortion in Texas almost overnight.
Right.
So now they're using the same technique in Colorado against conversion therapy people. Right. So, good for...
Well, they learned from us in the civil rights movement. We're learning from them.
Really?
Can't we all get along?
No. But good for Jared Polis on this, and he is one of us, is he not?
Oh, yes, he's an out gay. Used to be, in his day, he was a viewer, when he was in Congress, I guess, he was a viewer of the show. He kept up on stuff. All right, it is the 10th anniversary, hard to believe, of the Pulse Massacre. 57 people killed at the Pulse nightclub. And they are finally, after much stress, the city is getting around to doing a memorial, and here's the plans for it.
This week, Central Florida is marking 10 years since the attack at the Pulse nightclub that killed 49 people. This morning, we got a look at the progress being made toward building a permanent memorial to the victims. West 2's Bob Hazen is live at Orlando City Hall. Bob, the people designing it say they're on track.
Yeah, and they say they have just about all of the big picture stuff wrapped up, figured out. Now they're just fine-tuning those plans to get them ready for construction.
We're on track to meet the deadline and get the memorial started for construction in September.
Well, that was the word at Orlando City Council this morning, and the design team there showed the plans for the permanent memorial on the site of the former nightclub. It includes a reflecting pool where the dance floor used to be, an angel ellipse, a series of metal columns with a tribute to each of the 49 victims. There's also a visitors pavilion featuring a set of rainbow arms wrapping around the building. The inside mostly black and white there with a timeline of the attack and the pictures of all the people killed that night. We're also told there will be artifacts from the club there, including a chandelier, which the designers say actually originally came from the Moulin Rouge Club in Paris. But they also said there are major details that people will never see, including concrete from the demolished Pulse building itself. It's been crushed up. It'll be mixed in with the concrete for the memorial.
There were many of the family members that did not actually want the building demolished because their child had died there, and they felt like their soul was there. So in this way, we were able to preserve that and keep the buildings in a holistic manner on the site, but not in a physical, vertical representation.
And they also say the section of wall that the SWAT team busted through to get into the club on the night of the attack will be put under an obelisk monument near the reflecting pool. There will also be capsules holding personal belongings of some of the victims. Now, the planners say that the actual final cost of the building is still up in the air. They're working on that, but they believe it should be close to that $12 million figure that we've seen in the past. Again, construction is supposed to start in September. They're on track for that, and they believe that the construction process will take about a year to finish. Covering Orange County live in Orlando, Bob Hazen, West 2 News.
So $12 million. How about opening up a clinic for trans youth? Of course, you probably couldn't do that in Florida. I do like in the design that there's a lot of rainbows because, don't forget, Governor DeSantis has banned rainbows in the streets, and they keep
including outside of Pulse.
Right outside the Pulse, which was part of the memorial. And so they're putting it on all the buildings. So all you've done is make the rainbow more prominent.
All right, so last week we reminded you of the story of the judge in upstate New York, who her name is Felicia Pitts Davis, and how she had refused to officiate at the same-sex wedding of two women immediately after having officiated at the wedding of a heterosexual couple. Now, the thing in New York State, and this is a long-held compromise, is that you don't have to do weddings. But if you decide that you're not going to do same-sex weddings, you can't do any weddings at all. So either you're in for all or you're in for none. And that is clearly what she didn't do. Well, the update on this story is that the grand jury proceedings regarding this case have just been unsealed.
Against her wishes.
Against her wishes. She tried to have it, had it closed. But what it reveals is that the grand jury said, and this is a quote, Judge Pitts Davis laid bare her bigotry towards homosexual people and her willingness to put her personal feelings above her oath as an official charged with discharging the law. And they recommended that she be fired.
And, you know, the whole thing made the district attorney like, I'm going to bring cases before you, and this is the way you feel about gay people, and how are they going to get a fair deal? So, again, the Commission on Judicial Conduct, whatever, let her off with censure. And they did say there were extenuating circumstances. Her brother died. She had done a same-sex wedding in the past. But so now she says, all right, don't send weddings to me. But she does say, if nobody else can do a same-sex wedding, I'll do it. So that's progress, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that the principles of New York State that you either do them all or you do none are still being upheld. Yes. So, you know, we'll take that win.
All right. So we told you that the trial was underway for the killer of O'Shea Sibley in Brooklyn. O'Shea, he's on the poster there. They were at a gas station coming back from the beach. They were dancing around, and these kids started taunting them, and Dmitry Popov put a knife in him. It's a long story, and he was claiming self-defense and all this other kind of stuff. But the jury convicted him of manslaughter as a hate crime, not of murder. And so he was 17 years old at the time. He's 20 now. He was a beloved figure, O'Shea was, and he did face a life sentence if he'd been convicted of murder.
Murder as a hate crime, correct.
Yes.
So that's off the table. Meanwhile, continuing with the crime news, in Philadelphia, there's a mixed verdict on the 2022 murder of a man in their neighborhood. The death of Eric Pope happened outside a club called Taboo, now known as 254, when Kenneth Fry, who was the bouncer, took allegedly intoxicated Pope and punched him, causing him to fall backwards and strike his head, and Pope later died from that. So now Kenneth Fry has been found guilty of manslaughter, not of murder, and will be sentenced later.
Well, I saw a whole play called Punch on Broadway, which is terrific, about a kid who's at a bar and he one punch and the guy falls, hits his head and dies. And him having to deal with this for the rest of his life and with the family of the person that he killed. And, you know, it's the warning about, you know, throwing punches can end up in death. I walk along the street sometimes and want to jostle people or something, but I say, don't do it if anything bad could happen to them. All right. And heterosexual actor Shia LaBeouf pleaded guilty to 3 counts of simple battery related to a February incident. He assaulted 2 men and called them faggots during an altercation at Mardi Gras. And he said he feared them. Big gay people are scary to me. If that's homophobic, then I'm that. I don't know how he gets any work in the movie business
He hasn't been getting much. He also said, I'm good with gay. But be gay over there, though. Don't be gay in my lap. Whatever, dude.
He got 2 years probation and a 6-month sentence.
A couple of quick notes. There was a right-wing pitcher for the Dodgers, relief pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball team named, I'm not sure about the pronunciation. It's either Blake Treinen or Treinen. I don't follow baseball, so I don't know. Sorry. But he's an outspoken Christian conservative, and he refused on the team's Pride Night to wear the rainbow-colored Pride hat. He had in the past worn a hat with Charlie Kirk's name stitched on it after his assassination.
Was he gay?
Surrounded by 2 crosses.
We're not supposed to laugh about Charlie Kirk. We're not happy that he was killed.
No. That's not the point at all. Simply the absurdity of Mr. Treinen's actions. But you know what? Blake Treinen, you do you, and the rest of us will continue to do us.
Okay.
Also, in Pennsylvania, they're making a big push for gay tourism. It's nice that where states have been retreating on gay issues and declaring things like Nuclear Family Month in Pennsylvania, they're actually having a sorry, not sorry campaign in favor of LGBTQ tourism.
Well, that, of course, is, I assume, out of the governor's office.
Yes, Josh Shapiro.
Because the legislature, where the Senate is still controlled by the Republicans, the Democrats have the House narrowly, they will not pass a statewide LGBTQ rights bill.
Correct, and that's been a sore point in Pennsylvania for a long time. And finally, last point, the Turning Point chapter in Tennessee actually wrote their Nuclear Family Month proclamation, got somebody to introduce it in the Tennessee legislature, and that's how they got the declaration of Nuclear Family Month.
Tennessee, we feel for you down there. We know there are a lot of good people down there, but it is the hate state these days.
But it's good to know that Turning Point chapters are kind of all about that. When we hear about GOP governors who want to see a Turning Point chapter in every school. This is what it leads to.
They're also required, if kids want to do it, to have a LGBTQ group in the school, anywhere in the country. They can't stop that. That's federal law.
Sure, but they want to promote Turning Point chapters in the schools. So,
all right,
anyway.
Some of the people we lost. Well, one of the big things in the movement when I was young, in 77, I was fairly new to the movement, was, we were going along okay, and then Miami-Dade County had a gay rights ordinance, and they overturned it by a 2-to-1 margin in a referendum, and that was a shock to us, and it got us moving again. But the woman who introduced that has just died, Ruth Shack. She introduced the bill. She just died at 94. And of course, that referendum was led by Anita Bryant, but she got death threats over this and all kinds of things. But she got reelected at the next election, and her husband was Anita Bryant was one of his clients, so they knew her socially, and she tried to talk about it to Anita, and Anita just started quoting the Bible, and they were kind of done. But the gay rights ordinance was restored in 1998, though politics has gone to hell in most of Florida these days.
Won't set foot in the state. Meanwhile, not gay, but important in civil rights, Clarence B. Jones, he helped shape the I Have a Dream speech that Martin Luther King famously gave. He died at 95. He was a confidant and lawyer for MLK. He was an unseen force behind a lot of the civil rights events. He smuggled out the notes from Martin Luther King Jr. That became the letter from the Birmingham jail.
On little scraps of paper.
And margins of newspapers and eventually on notepads. And eventually that became the letter from the Birmingham jail. So he had a long history of as a lawyer, as a California entertainment lawyer, first black partner on Wall Street brokerage firm on the New York Stock Exchange, and the principal owner and publisher of the New York Amsterdam News. So yes. A long history.
But the other key case he was involved in, and I didn't know this, black ministers attacked Alabama officials for racism in a full-page ad in the New York Times. They didn't even name them. But some of the leaders down there sued for libel, and this became the landmark New York Times versus Sullivan case, which said if it's public officials, and you're not just being reckless in what you're saying and stuff like that, it is not libel. And that has been a key decision, which I know Trump would like to get rid of because he feels attacked all the time. By the way, when he was inducted in the Army in the 50s, he refused the loyalty oath and was given an undesirable discharge, and he sued over that, and he won. And he was given the Medal of Freedom by Biden a couple of years ago.
Excellent. Continuing on the civil rights path, Bayard Rustin is now getting a institute named for him at the National Civil Rights Museum. Now, Bayard Rustin, for those of you who don't know,
he's the one on the left there. Yeah, that's a friend of his.
Yeah, some guy on the right,
Martin Luther King Jr.
Martin Luther King Jr. And Bayard Rustin was actually the behind-the-scenes animating force behind the 1963 March on Washington. But because he was gay, he was marginalized in the movement. story told several times. Coleman Domingo starred in a movie, a fictionalized movie of his story, and
produced by Barack Obama and Michelle, I guess.
And a classmate of mine from Harvard, class of '84. Oh my goodness, Nancy Cates. Thank you. Hi, Nancy. Nancy Cates produced or directed Brother Outsider, a documentary all about Bayard Rustin and his life. Yeah.
And Bayard's partner, surviving partner, Walter Nagel, is still alive. He's the one I learned this from on Facebook. And there you go. And I knew Bayard at the end of his life as well, when he really wanted to finally get publicly involved in the gay movement. And he did play a key role in the mid-'80s. Before he died in 1987.
I did not know that.
Some other people who died were Ken Nugai, a veteran Queens gay activist. He died at 92 in Elmhurst. Danny Drum, the former he's still gay, but the city council member, he said he didn't give a damn what anyone thought of his sexual orientation. He lived openly, but he was a veteran of the U.S. Army, volunteered for the Queens LGBTQ rights organizations, the Democrats, the SAGE, the Pride Committee, everything. He was one of the foot soldiers in the Queens movement.
And it's these local activists who make all the difference in the long run.
Yes. And you can all do it. We can all do it.
Yeah.
We can all, as Ann Northrup says, everybody just needs to do something.
No, it's absolutely true. I am huge on the fact that we abdicate our power and think, there's nothing I can do about that, whatever that is. And I don't care how big that is, even if it's like climate change.
Well,
there is always something you can do personally, take on the personal responsibility and do something, just like Ann says.
I have to say, I'm 72, and I was preparing for the show last night, and I was going to go down to Mayor Mamdani's Pride thing and yell at him over this trans stuff. But I didn't have the energy, and I had to get ready to be with you.
Andy, nobody says you have to do everything.
No.
But I think people think, I can't do everything, so I'm not going to do anything. No, do what you can, but do something.
All right. We're doing something right now here with you, and we appreciate your watching. You're doing something by listening to all this stuff and tuning into it. And then in Philadelphia, a beloved drag performer, Martha Graham Cracker, has died. Great name, born Dito von Reigersberg, a singer, actor, cabaret star, fixture in the city arts and LGBT communities, dead at the age of 53. Complications from a bone marrow transplant in 2023. Ongoing fight against cancer. Strong advocate for the community, hosting drag performances at Pride concerts. Was known as the world's tallest and hairiest drag queen.
International news?
Well, I'd like to make some Pride announcements. With Pride organizations, facing the corporate retreat in the wake of Trump's assault on the anti-DEI, Phoenix Pride announced that it was filing for bankruptcy.
Wow.
But they're still going to go on. They're like a lot of corporations do when they file for bankruptcy. They're still going to go on, but this is happening all over the place. Corporations seem to be loving, I can't do it anymore, we'll get in trouble.
Yeah, you know what? Scale down. Have a march, old school march down the streets, get the permit, and keep it simple.
And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, on June 28th, there's going to be the New York City Pride, but we're going to have I think it's about the 10th annual Reclaim Pride Queer Liberation March. And this year we're going to assemble at Union Square and kick off at 3 o'clock and march downtown. You can still be part of the other parade if you want. That's up to you. And then, by the way, on this Friday, June 12th, Gays Against Guns, they're going to do a 10th anniversary of the Pulse Massacre, a rally honoring the lives of those who we've lost all over the place to anti-LGBTQ hatred. 6 o'clock at the Christopher Street Pier.
And while we were on the subject of Pride, let's talk about Bangkok Pride.
Yes, let's.
Huge celebration with 500,000 participants and spectators, and largely probably because Thailand last year legalized same-sex marriage. which is very exciting.
They had 500,000 people in the Capitol.
And organizers are hoping to host the 2030 World Pride. They're in competition with London and Barcelona. So they've got some stiff competition, but Bangkok is no slouch in terms of, the breadth of things it has to offer.
It sounds like a great idea. I also like the idea of taking World Pride to a place that is hostile to us, and or at least not going to get shot at, but you can, like they did it in Rome when Jesus turned 2,000.
But is Bangkok hostile to us? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Oh,
it's
okay.
not.
Oh.
So I'm thinking, we'll do it in Alabama or something, or whatever. Where we
Wow.
And then we told you how in Durham, England, when the fascist Reform Party took over the town council, they defunded the annual Pride March. So trade unionists who had LGBTQ people had supported in the past stepped up, and we have a report on that.
Real solidarity and a real working class community. So just like in the Pride film, everyone coming together. I heard the Reform government just said they're not going to give a penny. What we got was, you're not getting no funding, but don't worry, hon, we make it happen.
It's bigger and better than it ever was before, and that's because of the huge amount of funding that's been put in by unions and community groups to make sure that it happens, despite what Reform have tried to do. I vividly remember the support that the LGBT plus community gave me and my family, making donations, providing food, but also standing on picket lines. So it's an obligation to return that sense of solidarity and support in a time of most need.
The historic reason why I'm here today, Lesbian and Gay Support the Miners, came about in the miners' strikes 12 years ago. There was a movie made about it, so there's been a unity forged between the LGBT plus community and the trade union movement now for well over 40 years.
I've just been blown away. I suppose I've got to thank Reform because the response has been absolutely amazing. This year has really shown us that there's so much support and love for LGBT people.
What a success it's been. This is what the sign says. Pride 1, Reform 0.
I'm old enough to remember what it was like fighting you people 40 odd years ago, and what you're going to remember is we're still here and we've got stronger and stronger and stronger. So bring it on, Reform.
So I think we've done a bloody good job.
So if you get to see that movie Pride, which documents this from 40 years ago, it stars Andrew Scott, among others. It's a great cast and a lot of big stars from Britain. It is so moving. These small group of gay activists who raise money for the striking miners who are being oppressed by Margaret Thatcher, and they formed this alliance that has lasted to this day. So we need to get out. We need to build coalitions if we're going to succeed.
I was moved just by that little story. It's just.
Have you seen the movie Pride?
I think I have.
I hope so.
No, I'm pretty sure
out.
I have. But that story.
It's one of my
was just
favorite
wonderful.
films of all time. And then they're turning it into a musical, which sounds like a crazy idea. And apparently, I talked to Andrew Scott. I saw him on the street, and I said, "Have you seen the musical?" He said, "It's terrific." So that's good to know.
Is it playing in London or something?
It's getting to London. They played it in Wales, which is where the miners were.
Okay.
All right. Now, in Russia, 9 new LGBTQ groups have been banned as extremist. It's insane. I mean, it goes on and on and on. They just want to wipe us out. And in Italy, Catholic Scouts have opened their leadership to LGBTQ members, which I don't know the whole story behind that.
That must incense their right-wing prime minister. I can't think of her name.
And they consulted about it, and they decided to do it.
Huh?
Well, all right, maybe someday they'll even have women priests and openly gay priests instead of the 50% of priests who are in the closet, who are closeted gays. All right, AIDS news.
AIDS news.
The Housing Works, Health Gap, Act Up. They all went down to Washington to go against Marco Rubio, who was testifying. Rubio cuts kill people with AIDS. PEPFAR saves lives. And they all got arrested. It's they're terrific activists.
And just a reminder, PEPFAR is the program that George Bush started, so a Republican, but actually one of the great things that he ended up doing. It's actually one of the lasting good things the Republican president has done.
Rubio has withheld $2 billion in congressionally appropriated funding to the PEPFAR program Come on. I mean, this is literally killing people.
Yeah,
right
that
now.
along with the cuts to USAID is literally killing people.
So, there was this 45th anniversary of the first announcement of what became AIDS from the CDC, and they had a rally. This was Qween Jean from San Francisco and Sean Strube kind of pushed this, and we did it in New York at the AIDS Memorial, about 150 people, but Peppermint spoke to us.
45 years ago, the way this country worked, and there's a lot to be said about the way this country worked, but particularly the way this country worked allowed the political system to operate behind the scenes, to move money around, to usurp funding from projects and programs and use it the way that they wanted to, and not even utter the words AIDS or HIV for years while people were dying. And I'm grateful for the progress that we've made in large part because of many of the people that I believe are standing here in front of us right now. I'm grateful for that progress, but I know that that energy is because of the community spirit that was mentioned earlier. That is mutual aid. That is people showing up even when people did not know what was happening. We didn't have enough information. There wasn't enough government support to tell us what was happening. It wasn't in the news. It wasn't in the press releases and the press conferences. This was people talking about this in their own neighborhoods, in their own communities. And we're losing that again. We're losing the government support. We pretty much lost it. And we want to get it back. But in the meantime, it's so important that everyone else who can hear this message understand that they have to show up. And you may not be HIV positive. You may not ever even thought about HIV. You may be foolish enough to not get yourself tested anyway. But if you are a human being, you need health care. It is essential. It is essential.
And if you want to see Peppermint's full speech down there, go to my Facebook page or become my friend, and you can see it on there.
In other health news, Robert Kennedy Jr., our health secretary, the Times is reporting that he's disengaged from virtually everything going on in his department. He's solely focused on his top priorities, which are food recommendations, pesticide exposures, and hunting for evidence to support his belief that vaccines are harmful.
And you ought to be concerned about this because, like, this Ebola outbreak could be the worst in history, and there's nothing saying it's not going to get to these shores. And the hantavirus outbreak, all these things, you need to be on top of these things. They don't even have medical professionals at the head of a lot of the departments now. I mean, why aren't people going nuts about this?
It all goes back to the idea with the same thing with PEPFAR, with USAID, with our previous efforts to contain Ebola. The small amount of money you spend on these things relatively early on in other countries helps secure us, helps keeps these things from becoming such epidemics that they reach our shores, the way COVID did.
We have no Surgeon General. Half of the 27 institutes at the NIH are run by acting directors. The acting chief of the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases was recently fired. So it goes on and on and on. And this is going to include food safety and everything. But we better move on. By the way, on Pride events, we will link in our email. If you sign up for our email, go to gayusatv.org. There's a link where you can find any Pride event in the country. I mean, there are so many. Yes, I know the first one was in Chicago. You beat New York by a couple of days.
Meanwhile, there's a memorial coming up for Iris Long. I'm embarrassed to say I was not that familiar with her work.
Up.
Yeah, she was a chemist who got involved, not at all gay or
right.
gay involved, but she got involved when the AIDS crisis hit, and as a chemist became very active in ACT UP. So
this Saturday, June 13th, 3 o'clock, AIDS Memorial, we are going to remember Iris Long.
All right. Entertainment news?
Well, the big news in the Tonys, one for the history books, Qween Jean, whose costume design for Cats the Jellicle Ball won a Tony, is the first openly trans woman to ever win a Tony Award.
And she was nominated for 2 different shows, wasn't she?
She was nominated for Liberation 2, which won Best Play, for Best Wall, which they pointed out as the first play in 40 years by an American woman to win a Tony.
Wow.
God. Anyway, there have been several non-binary things in the past, but, Qween Jean gets up there and says, "Happy Pride!" That was a very gay event if you watched it.
Oh my goodness, when they did the excerpt from Rocky Horror and Luke Evans comes strutting out with that magnificent body of his plunged into a corset and his bare ass just covered by some fishnets. Oh my goodness. I was like, middle America is like having a meltdown here.
So Qween called theater makers the architects of imagination. This experience has been monumental. We are here for the legacy of queer people, trans people. We have to take up space. We have to shift the paradigm. So I just want to say thank you all so much for this incredible honor.
Also winning.
If you want to see Qween Jean, I'm going to link to an appearance she's making on June 15th at the CUNY Graduate Center where she's getting an award. And I say this to the nation because it's going to be online and you can watch if you like.
Also winning at the Tonys for Best Direction of a revival of a musical. Was Bill Rauch, and I'm embarrassed to say I can't think of the name of the co-winner because they co-directed it.
Jailon Livingston.
Thank you. But I particularly remember Bill Rauch because I'm giving him a shout out because he is my class from Harvard, another Harvard 84 person. Go Harvard 84. So it's very exciting to see him win. And we've been rooting for him because I saw that when it was downtown and then it transferred to Broadway. So when it was on Broadway, so energetic, so much fun, and so queer.
And going back, Ali Louis Borzgui, not himself gay, but an ally, won for Best Featured Actor in a Musical for The Lost Boys. What a speech he gave. He said, "Vampires represent those who have shown their own humanity in order to achieve a non-existent sense of superiority." He says, "The colonizers will never find fulfillment from the land and lives they steal. The fascists will never find meaning in their conformity, not in this lifetime." Gave big shout-outs to LGBTQ people, to the Palestinian people, to immigrants, to Arab filmmakers. What a speech.
Yeah.
And then another gay winner was Joe Mantello, a veteran director on Broadway. He won his third Tony for Best Direction of a Play for Death of a Salesman, which also won for Best Revival. The star, Nathan Lane, did not win Best Actor. They gave it to John Lithgow for playing an anti-Semite. Well, that's what they did. And then what do we got coming up? Okay. The Robin Bird story, Bang My Box. That's the title of it. It's going to be shown on She was the stripper, showwoman, gay rights advocate, everything.
For those of you who don't know, she was cable access, queen of softcore porn.
Least access.
Least access. Sorry, least access.
Which we were on. We were on least access in the old days.
And she would always end her shows with, or say during her shows, and remember, if you don't have a loved one, you always have me, Robin Bird. So she's still out there on Fire Island having a good old time.
This documentary is going to be on HBO and HBO Max on June 30th, and we're going to link to the trailer in our email.
And also, finally, Madonna showed up in Times Square, promoted by Grindr. She sang 3 songs from her new album. So she took over Times Square, and that giant pride flag appeared behind her. And it was, Madonna. How can you get gayer?
And we're out of time, and it's been great being with you.
Thanks, Andy, for having me.
I know you're going to be back in a few weeks, and Ann will be back next week.
Exactly.